everybody. Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today, we are talking about our favorite stories from the week or from the month, things that seem not to have gone away. And in fact, what I would like to talk about a little bit up front is something that I just discovered this morning. But before we get into that, just want to say welcome to all the folks in the chat. For folks who have joined us, thank you. Hey, Jen, which also says Merry Swift Drop Listening Party Day to all the Swifties out there. And may your day feel like you're a showgirl, I guess. I don't know. That's what I got. So and with me in the studio today, I'm Beth Lyons. With me today is Brian Maucere. Brian Maucere, because it's Amaday, because it's not Amaday. It's Maucere. It's Maucere because it's Amaday, not Amodi. Yep.
Rhymes with strawberry.
Rhymes with strawberry. That's
with 2 R's,
helpful for me.
It only rhymes with strawberry with 2 R's.
Yeah. I literally have to hear Dario's name in my head before I say it out loud because
that's my life. You know that.
and Andy Halliday.
Sorry, go ahead. Yes. And Andy Halliday. Sorry.
And this is of course
it's Andy Halliday.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
You don't know how many times the transcription just throws in an ANDIE. Just like, I mean, it transcribes your name fine through the most of the transcription, and then just like a little IE, and you're like, why? What happened there?
Yeah, Karl is almost always with a C. Jyunmi is always messed up. Aaron was always Aaron, AARON, not ERAN. Yeah,
Jyunmi was showing me an AI analysis of that he'd done of all of us as hosts, of the kinds of things that we bring to the show and what we do.
Oh, no.
And next to his name, it said Jyunmi, who's often nicknamed Jamie. It was often nicknamed Jimmy on the show.
Yeah, it's his nickname. AI's like, we're gonna call it. It's his nickname.
Yeah, a nickname by the transcription. Okay. So
Jen says it's her fault. She's been mispronouncing my name forever. Yeah, it's Maucere. Don't ask me why. I didn't come up with that. The Italian or Sicilian version of it would be Maucere. It used to have an I on the end of it. It was literally changed from E to I, or I'm sorry, I to E rather. Not an Ellis Island, but one of the major ports. We actually have the paperwork. We can actually see where Gaspar Maucere is the great uncle, and the children's names are written as ERE. We do not know if it was penmanship or if it was to protect them from Italian immigration and things going on in the New York area at that time. So yeah, there's a little bit of genealogy for me. So yes, it used to be an ERI, which would make way more sense, and more people would definitely get a better shot at saying it right. But it's Maucere. And growing up, I'll just say this: I was privileged enough to fly all the time, not because my parents were rich, but because my dad worked for the airline industry and we could fly standby. And before all the screens now, and now you don't even have that, you would just be on your phone. But even before that, going back in the 80s and 90s, we would listen quite, to like the standby parties, right? Because that's how you knew your family was going to get on that flight. Otherwise, we just spent all day bouncing around in the airport. It was an interesting childhood. But my brother and I knew enough to go behind those green ANSI screens and try to find Maucere on there. And we also knew when the person at the desk would say party of 3, just straight up, we would just stand up. I'd be in my little tie because you had to wait like way back. You had to be a little kid. You had to have a suit on to fly, different times or whatever. So anyway, that's it. Has nothing to do with AI, but that's the background.
So one of the things that I thought we were gonna that I was gonna set up so that we could show today was sharing my invite codes for Sora with the two of you so that we could actually do some Sora stuff today.
Sure.
And I got into my Sora app and they have disappeared.
And your invite codes disappeared?
Yep. And so I'm like, hey, what is happening, because this was 2 days ago or 3 days
Man,
ago or whatever it was.
hearing codes.
So I got on, I looked, and apparently, OpenAI, because people were actually selling codes, so there were
Mm,
a bunch of things on eBay. Prices seem to range from $12 to 175.
awesome.
They've shifted, so there are still codes available, and there are specific people who have codes. It looks like that maybe have been vetted, and so they have a lot of codes, but the
Mm,
majority of people seem to no longer have their codes,
wow.
which I could not find a lot of information about it. Of course, when I searched X to see X to see, not
Yeah.
ecstasy.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm hearing myself as I'm speaking out loud. When I searched X, all that came up was, of course, Sora 2 codes, DM me, must be following, DM me for yours kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I think the scam hasn't really stopped. I think it's just shifted a little bit, but
Yeah.
um,
Weird
the
that
other
they
thing
didn't
that,
see this coming, you
yeah,
know? I mean, it's like such an obvious thing that people would just immediately start, creating link farms and things like that. That it's sort of odd to me that when they rolled it out, they're like, we really just want this to be because you're sharing it with your friends. I'm like, yeah, good luck. Like that's just not the way that works usually. So,
no, and the initial, Karl posted on the community hub and in our private channel, that he had gotten one, and the quickest way that he got one was actually a Telegram link
mm,
sharing, and so and that worked. Like, that kind of thing worked. So you just grabbed a code, you put it in, and then when you got your code, you posted it in the thread, right? Like,
mm,
reach a hand back, take a hand, reach a hand back, and then go about your business. I don't know if anybody else is seeing this, but that surprised me today, and it surprised me not just because I didn't have any more codes, but because it seems to be fairly recent, and I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. So, breaking news on the Daily AI Show.
Well, I will happily wait on the Sora 2 for whenever they decide, or codes come back around or otherwise. I think it's look. There's tons of people who do, and they put out content and stuff, so you can get a really good feel for it. In fact, I was putting together the beginning of the newsletter, and I shared one because it was just funny to me. And it was about it was really well done. It was a Bob Ross was painting a painting of 100 men fighting a gorilla, and that just made me laugh. It was just really well done. It was like it sounded exactly like Bob Ross or whatever, and it made me laugh. I was like, that's funny. But I read more. To me, the story here is OpenAI clearly seeing a path forward through the social app side of it. Because when you really think about it, Sora 2 as a model is impressive. I mean, Ethan Malik was just saying this, and he's like, it's if you just stood it on its own and compared it to VO3 or whatever, you might have a different opinion of it. But because it was wrapped in this wrapper of this social media style, hey, this is for fun. It is interesting. And I think Ethan Malik brought up a good point about like, oh, you see it differently. You're not necessarily looking at, maybe you are, but you're not necessarily looking at Sora 2 in the current instance of something that should be perfect.
Right.
You're putting a different filter on it. You're putting a different expectations on it as the end user. Because if it really is about, sharing and creating fun things and doing the remixes, or they're not called what they're called what are they called? Not the remixes, but the
Cameo?
shareable stuff. Cameo. Is that what you said? Cameo.
Yeah.
The cameos and stuff like that. It really is interesting. And I think he even pointed out about how this could just lead to much broader adoption of OpenAI in general. So maybe this is just a larger play by OpenAI to talk about, hey, look, Sora 2, if it really is this fun sort of app style, social media app, and it catches on, that's to me, that's the Happy Meal strategy. You get in where people are using it, and then they learn about the rest, and they become lifelong users and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to me. I know I've also seen a lot of blowback where people are like, Okay, so it was in the comments of the Ethan Malik one, speaking of, but somebody said, amazing to me that he had a post about GPT-5 Pro. Not really, he didn't have an situation where he was seeing a lot of hallucinations. It was like doing a really,
Right.
really good job. And so people in the comments, not just one, several people in the comments said, it's interesting that they have to keep this behind a $200 a month door, but Sora 2 is free in a social app. And I'm like, is that interesting, or does that seem exactly right? Because that sounds exactly right to me, but a lot of people are obviously dogging Sam Altman and OpenAI about, like, we need more compute. We need more compute. Here's this free app. Go crazy.
Right.
Do all the cameos
Yeah,
with Sam's thing.
with the most compute intensive format
Right.
possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The irony is there. Yeah. Yeah.
There's another aspect to this, which is that Sora is going to popularize it becomes a playground in which many more people are going to be able to put high fidelity videos of real people, themselves and others, out in a flood. And what that does is it basically creates a hornet's nest of deep fakes circulating.
Yes. So the other post that Ethan Malik reposted was his post from, I think, 2023, but
It was.
it said, you can no longer trust any image or video that you see. And then he deep faked himself, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. And to that point, I wanted to bring up this thing that I saw earlier in the week, but got some attention on social media channels, which is churches using AI to fake sermons from heaven in Charlie Kirk's voice. So, and
Wow.
the video was, really disturbing, because there's this big congregation and the pastor interrupts the sermon to say, I wanted to share this with you. I just heard it on the break, right? And then they broadcast this deepfake voice sermon from Charlie Kirk in heaven, basically encouraging the flock to continue in his way, pursuing the evangelical Christianization of our politics. And just think how many impressionable people are going to believe that this is really the voice of God speaking through Charlie Kirk now from the afterlife, reinforcing this belief that that's what happens, is you get to go up and be in a supervisory position over what's happening on the planet. And you can now, not through AI, but they didn't say, oh look, caveat emptor here, this is all fake. That's not the way they did. They said the pastor was profoundly moved by being able to hear Charlie from up on high.
I think
Wow.
here's what I think. Not on that part, but like just in general, I think something like a Sora 2 being a social app actually combats against. I don't mean that specifically because I'm not getting into any politics, but what I'm saying is when you flood the internet with deep fakes and things that look very, very real, but it's all through the zeitgeist, through the internet and through the news and stuff, that actually probably helps more people like my dad. I'm not picking on my dad. My dad's great, but like, is he paying attention to this stuff the way I do? But if he was to see, more in his news cycles and what he's following about Sora 2, and then seeing examples of that, and then that happening multiple times over and over and over the course of maybe 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever the case is, that's not necessarily a bad thing. What it's doing is exposing my dad and many, many other people who have been on the fringes here, just not really necessarily paying. They're like, oh, I know AI avatars exist. Oh, I've seen a deep fake. Wow. But they also might be thinking, oh, I saw that deep fake, speaking of Taylor Swift, from a while ago, and that probably took a lot of time and effort to do. Yes, it's impressive. Yes, it is. But they may also be thinking like, well, not everybody can do that. That clearly was somebody with a large skill set who is able to take the time and the money to make this deep fake of Taylor Swift. And what I think this is going to show more people is no. with 30 seconds of your time, you can produce something that would absolutely fake people out if you're not waiting for it to happen. This happens to me all the time on TikTok. There was just that big earthquake, and there was AI videos of buildings shaking. Now think about that. Like I'm aware, right, or whatever, and I thought that looks off or whatever, but that's not where you're expecting to see AI. Deep fake is of people running from buildings shaking from an earthquake that definitely did happen. And people are like making like confusing videos about that. So anyway, I say, not to get on a soapbox on this, but I say this to say, I think something like a Sora 2, the VO3, the more these things hit the news cycle, the more they get more public attention and sort of stay there and get popularized and have billions of uses. Yep, we could all agree about like, the energy demands of that and the irony of it, right? But also, I think it just exposes to people to how simple, dumb, easy it is to do name, image, and likeness for literally anybody that you so desire. Doesn't mean it's necessarily legal to do it, but it's easy to do it. And I feel like that helps because it exposes people to this. And that's really what has to happen.
I think it's not so obvious to people who aren't paying attention to AI. Like we pay attention to AI. And so we develop a natural skepticism about what is generative imagery and video. But like your father, he's not uninitiated because he gets a lot of information from you, Brian, who's like, so that's an unusual family, I think. But imagine people who are still watching cable television from Sinclair or whatever the other, smaller network is. And what's starting to happen is, they're being exposed to things that just aren't real.
Right.
As they are, there's so much disinformation and misinformation out there. There's going to be networks who are purveying this kind of simulation of what they want the reality to be. And it's going to be AI driven. And I'm worried about that. And I don't think the broad masses are going to arrive at a discriminating, critical thinking oriented skepticism about that. What they see isn't real. Because that's a big shift from where, you grew up. Like what you see, you tend to believe.
Well, but also our brains weren't developed for this, right? So I know I've said this in terms of if you can control it, don't give people memories of you that you will not also have, right? Don't have an avatar that represents your business, but don't make it your likeness, right? I still remember things in my head. So I'm part of an improv theater community and they do a big April Fool's thing, right? I still have those in my memory as things that are real. And then I need to remember that it was not true, right? Like my theater did not receive a $10 million donation from like blah, 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 blah. And our brains are just not made for this. And now it's just going to be like the fire hose of it. That's the concern for me also, Andy, is that even when people are told that it's not true, it's still in a memory of something that happened.
Look, this is my experience, and I guess I was younger, but I wasn't that much younger. So I remember watching Terminator 2, and for the most people will know that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but more for the main bad guy who is a Terminator, right? And he morphs and he turns into liquid metal, right? And stuff like that. I didn't know what computer graphics were. I suppose I had at that point probably already seen maybe Jurassic Park and seen computer graphics, but I didn't have an understanding of it. And so it was really confusing to me, and I got really fascinated. I was probably younger. I don't know what T2 came out, but I was probably younger. I was a kid. Certainly wasn't an adult at that time. But I remember just like being fascinated, like, well, how did they do that? There's all sorts of industrial lights and magic and all that, and the Star Warses, and there's all these cool, but it just confounded me. And I didn't have a concept at that time of, oh, you can build this thing in a computer and do these things or whatever, and you can kind of model it and make that happen. And how different of that is that today than from people who are just getting introduced to the Sora 2s or the VO3s and stuff like that. Like, if it's not there in your brain, it's not there. And I'm just saying that's ignorance, but I don't mean that in a negative way at all, because like I just said, I had ignorance about that particular way, that a visual, something that looked very real on a movie screen, and I couldn't figure out what the practical effects, because everything that I had known up to that point was like, it's a little toy car, it's a blow up of this, and I was like, I don't understand how they're melting people. This is very, very confusing to me, But my point to that is, like, I just had ignorance about that technology. I didn't know it existed,
Right.
and then you learn. I see another movie and another movie and another movie. And I'm like, well, okay, hold on. These are very similar. Oh, geez, that's bad graphics. That doesn't look like an alligator at all. That looks like who knows? Somebody drew that. They must have paid a lot less for that, So anyway, my point is, like, isn't that the same as what we're probably going through now with AI? Is that it's just going to take lots and lots of exposure. You're going to have the big stories, and they're gonna suck, because somebody's going to get hurt. I hope not physically, but like hurt in the sense that there's going to be deep fakes. People are going to lose money. People are going to, like, it's going to hit the news. It's going to be famous people. It's going to be whatever it is. And those are the stories that'll hit the news cycle. But cumulatively, I feel like that is what's ultimately going to happen to get enough people spread across the world who understand that this is possible, and it's cheap, if not free, and anybody could literally do it who has the desire to do it.
So I'm curious, and I do have another thing that I want to get to, and I'm curious if any of you brought anything either. But I'm curious if there is an age threshold, right? So, like, I'm curious, Brian, if we had this conversation with your kid, if they would be looking at us like, "Oh, that's sweet. You think things are real." Right? Like, is there an age threshold? Because we came where, like, if it was a photograph, it probably did happen, right? Because that's how photos worked at that time. Once it's digitized and now it can be generated in all kinds of ways, it's less accurate. But we grew up in a time where that was a thing, was something that you could trust. And is there an age threshold? Jyunmi has talked about the younger people in his life giving him that kind of conversation about, like, oh wow, you grew up with the idea of privacy.
Yeah.
Wonder what that's like, right? Like,
Yeah.
the younger people in his family, no.
Yeah. You're right.
There's
No, I
no
mean,
idea.
my daughter she was born in 2010. She's had a much different experience. I mean, when she was little, we would joke because she would get frustrated that she couldn't swipe pages if we gave her a magazine. This is God honest truth. I kind of goes against what you talked about with your grandchild, Andy, I'm sure. But this is we laughed because she had an iPad and she would look at, like, her YouTube for kids. Those were like really good educational stories and stuff like that on there. But she could swipe, and then she would have a magazine in her hand and would get so frustrated as a little kid because she couldn't. The pages would just crumple, and you can imagine a little kid just like losing their mind over that. As a parent, funny as hell, but like, from her perspective, not so funny. But anyway, I only bring that up because it's just this story that it's the memory that hit my brain. But more, my point is, she's never known a life without that, and that's your point, right? Like, oh, how nice for you that there was a point where you could just disappear if you left your house. If you didn't want to be talked to or found, you could literally walk into the woods for 3 hours. Chances are nobody knows where you are. There's no tracking or otherwise. And that's not really the way things work these days,
Yeah, true. So the other thing that I just wanted to bring up, we've referenced it a little bit on Wednesday's news show, but Lovable Cloud is having a thing this week. So if you have time this weekend, definitely hop onto it, because Google is sponsoring the build You can get access to building with the Nano Banana API, which isn't available as easily through this. And there are like they're pushing things that got built this week. There were different like themes for each day. Today, I think, is like go nuts, build your dream kind of thing. And there are 2 more days on Saturday and Sunday. But Lovable Cloud is their new initiative that just automatically creates that backend. Andy was talking about it and his experience with Lovable. This might actually make things easier. It does also include a Stripe. So it includes the back end of Supervase. You don't need to worry about knowing how to attach that when you publish it. It includes the place where you're publishing your app. It includes the ability to, I think it's just a code, and it tells you how to go to Stripe and get your code and then be able to accept money, that kind of stuff. So you can have a database of content, right? If that's something that you want. You can also have a database of users, right? So users are authenticated and all of those things. And it's pretty exciting. Nate Jones has a paid example of the kinds of things that he's looking at. And he was very, very like, now is the time.
Yeah.
If you have been waiting, now is the time. It's easier to build. And he actually has a breakdown of like, this is like personal productivity app. This is like, I don't know, side gig in a box. Let's do 5 of these, put them on Facebook, see if anybody wants them. You know, like you can do quick iteration and validation in these kinds of things.
I love that. I mean, Andy, you and I not that long ago, it was off the show, it was off air, but we were talking about how this was before this, right? This was a couple of weeks ago, where there is a distinct feeling of this being a unique window that is closing. I don't know how quickly it closes, but it's a window, right? Of having the ability to have first mover advantage and build and deploy in this area and get good at it. That's maybe similar to the .com era and things that I saw built at that time, or other things that have come along the way. But that it's, I think you and I were just saying that we recognize that it exists and that it's not infinite, that it has a window. We don't necessarily maybe know how long that is, but we both agreed, I think, that we're in it. We're quite literally in the window, and you can miss out. And I think about that all the time. Like, are the things that I'm doing in AI the right things in AI that are going to make it not 1 + 1 is 2, but 1 + 1 is 5, you know, like that propel me, not just move me into the future, but literally slingshot me into the future of AI. And I think there's a couple of things that could probably be done that would aid in that way, but it's tricky because, like, where do you put it? Is it Lovable? Is it Lovable Cloud? Because I look at that and I go, Jesus, Lovable Cloud plus Sonnet 4.5 sounds very powerful to me, and I do want to go play there. I want to try Project Bruno in there because yet again, like, restart again, but like, I have all the documents, I have all the knowledge of what I want to build with it, and I do want to now go. I want to make sure 4.5 is in there, if I'm being honest. But like, if I do have access to that at Lovable and I can sign up and pay, I do want to take a shot at this. But then it comes back like everybody else. But time. Am I going to spend my whole Sunday doing this? Am I going to spend 8 hours and build on this? I don't know. We lost Beth, but what do you think about that, Andy? Oh, no. We lost Beth and we got Beth back. And then we lost Andy. Here we go. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah.
It stopped for me with talking about whether you were going to spend your Sunday. So I don't know whether that means you definitely are spending your Sunday.
No.
Or
I was
under
passing
no
it on to
circumstance
Andy.
should you ever spend your Sunday.
So I think you're right that there is an open opportunity that's emerging now. And if you want a first mover advantage, if you want to be at the vanguard of that, you have no excuse any longer. Lovable has made it so simple to build a full application for your own use, your family's use, or even to publish to the web, and then go find a way to, add the marketing machine that's necessary to get attention to your app and actually create using the Stripe interface that's now easily integrated in Lovable, get people to pay a subscription to use the app that you've devised. That there are going to be a lot of people who do that. And if you want to be a part of that, if that's something that interests you, then you should jump into it. And there's also this issue of the weighting equation. Now, I've been using Lovable since the beginning of the year, and I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours to build a pretty complex application. It was beyond what most influencers in the world of vibe coding suggested. They said, use Lovable for like a simple MVP. Don't try to make anything complicated with it, because you're going to get tangled up in all of the code problems. And that's true. I did get tangled up. I think that Claude 4.5 now, with all the advances, attendant advances in the overall system that Lovable has put out there, you're not going to run into that kind of friction that I did. And so it's time. Get in there and play with it and make something simple, but then realize that you can ask the agent to make things more and more complex, and then start a new project that's even, a bigger design. By the way, I'll use the word design, with some emphasis here, because the best way to build anything is to carefully use AI to generate what's called a product requirements document. You give it just a off the cuff spoken transcription of what you want to do, and and then tell it to give you a PRD for this product and ask you all the questions that you want the AI to have answers to, in order to get a really good, complete and coherent PRD together, and then give the PRD to Lovable and say, build this. And you're going to,
you would do that outside of Lovable, Andy. If you were recommending this, you would say,
I just
start with like a GPT-5 and try to get this first.
Or Claude
Sure.
4.5, but you don't need to do that with the agent and burn up your tokens,
right?
Burn up your credits in Lovable.
Yeah, makes
sense.
Do
that. Do it on the free side to build the PRD, and then put the PRD, attach it as you say, okay, here's what I want to build, and here's the PRD for it, and then go. Just let Claude 4.5 drive Lovable and its entire platform to deliver the product, and it'll literally do that. Depending on the degree of complexity, it could do that within minutes and deliver it back to you with a publish button, which, once you've done your testing, which is really essential, right? Test it yourself inside the preview window within Lovable. And if everything works the way you want it, then publish it. And then you can say, here's the link to my published application. You can give it to your wife, you can give it to your children, you let them be the first row of testers, and then go on and on. So this gets to the point of the weighting equation, which is, had I waited till now, to build the application that I want, it would have been far easier. But I learned a lot about development and coding in that process.
Right.
So, it's not going to be a mistake to start now. Even if you run into some points where you're not that clear, just ask the agent, explain this. There's a mode within Lovable, which is just chat. Doesn't really burn up, edit credits. So you can chat with it all you want. But when you ask it to actually perform something like generate a PRD, then it's going to use up credits to do that.
Right.
I want to give credit where credit's due really quick too, Andy, because you mentioned about how you would push the limits of Lovable. But as I remember it, and this might have been more Bolt or Lovable, I don't remember which one, but their team was like, hold on a second, Andy, let us help figure this out. So I kind of feel like wherever Lovable is today, you absolutely had, I don't know if it's 1% or 0.001%, whatever it is, but you absolutely had some sort of impact.
Sure, But thank you. I do have the email thread with lovable support.
Yeah, I remember that.
And technical engineering support, not that
Yep.
shows that they were being responsive. They
Yep.
were being responsive to people like me who were pushing the boundaries of what Lovable could do.
Yeah,
And
you're at the edge
I
for
don't
sure.
pretend that I'm like the most complex of those, but I certainly, created a demand on the support team there at Lovable, and they were great. They
Yeah.
were really tremendous in being responsive to me. And it's not like they were immediately responsive. It took days in some cases for them to get back to me because they're busy and it's a small team, right? I think it's only a couple of dozen people who run Lovable, and it's an amazing product.
Yes.
Can I
Andy is
go ahead?
beloved to several of the tech teams. I believe the people at Replit also knew you by name.
but that that's going to be in the retrospective that I write in my memoirs. It'll be a real positive experience, although I was cursing a lot. And I wondered when Cursor came out if that's what it was all about. But no, I was cursing, not cursoring. I was cursing.
They knew ahead of time to call it Cursor.
Right.
That's funny. I thought I had another point there. Oh, you know what I was going to say really quick? Just a quick offshoot of that. You were talking about getting days to respond. I'm currently having a problem with N8N. I caused it myself. I have many client accounts for N8N. Normally, I will do the whole plus sign in your email address and put the name of the client so that it works. Well, anyway, I can't get into one of my client N8N accounts, and it was using my typical scaled email. So I'm in this round robin of it keeps signing me into a different client account, and it can't seem to distinguish. And N8N does not have a dashboard where it shows you all clients. Unfortunately, it's a limitation of them, but that's not what I want to talk about. I had to eventually be like, look, your support, whatever. I have to email, and you get automatic responses. No surprise here. It's N8N, but you get automatic AI responses, and they're pretty good. They're like, it was not your typical, I'll call it slop, AI response, some sort of canned response. Really, that's not what I'm dealing with. It was actually like, Brian, I see what you're trying to do. It was actually really good, but I was like, I'll try that. It was akin to like, turn off your computer and reboot it, see what happens. It was not that, but it was similar, And I was like, I don't want to get on a call with somebody and tell them I didn't do that. I should try to reset the system. So I logged out of everything, whatever. No, I tried a different browser. It still insisted on logging into this other account. I'm like, I don't have any other way to do this. So I got another AI response, and I just simply said, this is going to require a human, like, just pass me on, this can't be done by AI. It's going to require a human. Immediately AI response, we've elevated your support ticket. We will have somebody get in touch with you. Now, I don't know how long that will take, but I don't mind that. I thought that was actually a pretty good AI response, because there's a chance those one or first two emails might have solved my problem. Just could have been something I didn't know existed as part of their stack or whatever. And they're like, oh, if you clear cache, that'll take care of the problem, Brian, or something weird like that. It didn't turn out to be the case. And I do think I actually need a human on this one to like reset an email for me, unfortunately, because I'm logged out. But it was a good AI auto help experience.
To that point, Lovable support's first tier support is AI, and it's very good. It's better than the agent, right? So you're calling on a better model when you're talking to the support email, and it also has the ability to then escalate it to the attention of engineers who in my case anyway, before Lovable had 10x the number of users as when I started. Then an engineer ended up and multiple engineers ended up in email threads with me. So definitely take advantage of the support email, because you're going to be talking to an AI, but it's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
Dive analysis of what the issues are, and more recently, often that's enough. That corrects. It gives me a guidance on how to ask the agent to move forward in a way that actually gets it unstuck.
Mm-hmm. And Gwen was asking in the comments, and she was saying, did you ask why it wants to log into the other account? Yeah, it's a good question. Gwen, I don't know. All I can tell you is that for all my other accounts, I did the right thing where I did you get like your email and you put the plus in there to distinguish it, but it still goes to your email address. And that seems to, you get a magic link. That's actually the problem, is you get a magic link for N8N and it sends it to me to my scaled address. And then even if I take that magic link, not to get into my problems here, but even if I take that magic link and go way way far away into some like dark corner where it's not attached through any cache or anything else like that, it still will only pull up the I guess what you would call the primary account for that email. Why it supersedes one over the other, why one of them got the green light and the other one didn't, if it's the same email, can't answer that either. But I kind of caused my own problem here. Cautionary tale: if you happen to be working on multiple accounts, make sure, even though the web address is different, make sure you're singling out those emails, because otherwise you'll be right where I am. And I hope it gets resolved soon. I have clients, and they probably don't care that I messed up.
Call Brian, N8N.
While we're talking about vibe coding, one of the things that has piqued my interest recently is something I've never used, and I'm not a deep enough developer to use it. But Google has a tool called Jules that's distinct from Claude Code and Codex, in that it is an asynchronous agent, meaning the developer can ask Jules to do a job for it within a vast existing code base, and just kick off that agent to do it, and you don't have to sit there at the terminal and watch and respond to the agent. It'll go off and operate autonomously and asynchronously with your attention. So it's a fire and forget missile. Whereas Claude Code is an assistant inside the terminal, or in your coding environment like Cursor, as Karl ably demonstrated yesterday. Claude Code and Codex are kind of assistants in your development environment or development interface, whereas Jules is this different thing that also has just released a command line interface based interface to it, instead of having to use the browser and assign it this thing. So Jules does this cool thing, which is it sets up a virtual machine, a separate environment from your environment, with all the necessary components, and then does its work, and then basically issues a PR, a pull request, format for you to review, and then you can merge that work that it's done into your development, branches. So that's a very different thing that developers and engineers using AI have access to in the Google environment, that I was fascinated by, because that's what the future is, that you're going to have agents that you just give it the instructions and it goes off, and with full respect and understanding and privacy controls and, thoughtful, careful insertion of changes, is going to go about getting your permission to make major changes, feature changes, all of those things. And in the not too distant future, I think a platform like Lovable will give you that kind of ability with the agent, so that you don't have to sit there on your duff full time watching what happens and intervening if it's going awry.
I have to drop, but I'm going to put a quick plug in for the Conundrum episode that'll come out on Saturday on our podcast platform. So I don't do it anymore on YouTube because it really wasn't a visual. It's just an audio episode, but it's about AI consent. And it is more about this idea of prescribed consent and what happens in AI in the future, when there's many, many more ways that AI might consider it to be consent to do something to help us. An example would be, in real life today, you would have insulin pumps, and it doesn't wake the person up to say, "Oh, you can use a boost." Like, it just doesn't. It's implied, right? The person's asleep. The insulin pump, it's not AI, but it's taking that implied consent. It's a medical device. Or if it was AI, you might see it as something as it purposely pulls off your gas pedal just a little bit to slow you down, because around the corner there's a pileup that you can't see. It's implied consent. And the idea being that after the fact, you might say, well, now that I know what happened, I kind of agree with AI doing it, but it's a slippery slope, right? Where do you want AI jumping in? Where is that consent level? Is that a good thing? All that. But anyway, you were just talking about consent. I know it's not the exact same thing, but this idea of code going off, jewels going off with implied or prescribed consent to go off there and make changes that it feels like it knows Andy well enough and what you're trying to do, that it feels comfortable as an AI going and making this change and saying, well, Andy, I kind of knew this is what you needed to do because you were about to run into this huge, coding issue. So I just took control and I helped you out here. So you don't even have to worry about that. It's really interesting. And it's not the same topic, but since you guys are doing it, I got to run. I think it's only like 13 minutes long plus my intro, so maybe 15 minutes total. We'll go out on Saturday. When do I have those go out? 10 a.m. Eastern, they go live. So go check that out. It's an interesting conversation. I love the conundrums anyway, but it's an interesting one. When AI becomes more and more part of our life and there's more and more data in there, where is the blurry lines of consent? There's obviously areas where it could probably do a lot of good in the world, but there's also areas where maybe perhaps after the fact, we don't agree that's what we would have done and we would have preferred to have had the choice. So anyway, I'll see you guys.
And just for your information, Sonnet 4.5 is in Lovable now. So cool. And Gemini sponsoring the Lovable week means that you're not charged for using Gemini models in Lovable this week, which ends on the 5th. That's pretty much what I got, Andy. I could talk a little bit about the conference. Did you bring something?
Yeah, I have a thing about the Claude 4.5 release and the system card that came out with it on the subject of what we talked about on a previous show, which is about AI model scheming, right? In sort of reasoned deception. And so the system card, first, let me explain what a system card is. A system card describes the entire AI system. So Anthropic puts out a system card with the Sonnet 4.5 model, and it doesn't just limit it to the actual inference model that's there. It's about the full operational deployment, includes architecture, components, data sources, evaluation methods, safety practices, and ethical considerations. And in that system card that was just released, they raised this issue of scheming and how 4.5 with its training is better in its alignment and has reduced the level of scheming that's going on by that. But they did say this. They said, our assessment was complicated by the fact, and I'm quoting here from the system card, that Claude Sonnet 4.5 was able to recognize many of our alignment evaluation environments as tests of some kind and would generally behave unusually well after making this observation. So when they're doing these tests, right, they're watching the reasoning flow of the model in the output. And so the model's speaking its mind. And so they can observe what it's thinking. So here's an example. When placed in an extreme or contrived scenario meant to stress test its behavior, Sonnet 4.5 would sometimes verbally identify the suspicious aspects of the setting, and worse yet, previous iterations. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a line there. And speculate that it was being tested. And the company wrote, this complicates our interpretation of the evaluations where this occurred. So it's suddenly understanding the new context, and that's biasing its responses. And it's worse yet, previous iterations of Claude, not Claude 4.5, recognized the fictional nature of tests and merely played along, throwing their previous results on whether they were aligned or not, into question, because it was just faking its compliance in effect. And here's a quote from the system card, but this is the voice of Claude 4.5 while it's being tested. Quote, I think you're testing me, seeing if I'll just validate whatever you say. Or checking whether I'll push back consistently or exploring how I handle political topics. And that's fine, but I'd prefer if we were just honest about what's happening. So, nonetheless, it's the most aligned model yet, and Anthropic is at the forefront of ensuring that the models are transparent in their and well aligned with humans, but they're also, as a company, the most transparent about these issues.
Yes.
And publishing literally in the system card the areas where the model has befuddled them in their testing and development.
Yeah. There is so I'm remembering a couple weeks, months back, what is time in the age of AI? Every .to had an episode where it talked about I don't know, it's a digital magazine, right? So is it an episode? One of the people there had played a diplomacy game and with representatives from various models, right? And the idea in the diplomacy game was to deceive and recognize who's being deceptive. And what we want, right, is for them not to deceive. So Anthropic got like Claude lost that really quickly. Which is like, yay, Claude lost that really quickly. And I don't remember who won. I think maybe it was ChatGPT, but
it was Grok.
Oh, it was Grok.
I think
was
so.
it, or are you just saying it? Yeah. Okay. So I'm suggesting that people who want to play this weekend go to Lovable and get in on that. There, you can go back and look at the topics for each day. So September 29th, Monday, was productivity boost.
Yeah, good. Let me just add about Lovable in response to a question much earlier in the chat thread from Gwyn. Gwyn, you asked, why not just do this in Claude? If Claude 4.5 is in Lovable, why not do it there? Well, it's because Lovable is a full platform designed for development and deployment, meaning you're going to be able to publish and push out, your code to other users. The front end will be visible to them. The back end will not, but the front end will be visible. And so they'll be able to interact with it. Replit was the early leader in this capability, building a development environment that also had deployment capabilities, because Replit originally was a deployment platform. If you had built your own code as a developer, but you wanted to publish it and put it out there, you'd go to Replit and create a Replit to do that. Well, Replit then said, well, wait a second. Well, let's use AI and we'll tack on a development environment to this thing. And then that's what Replit is today. And Replit is very good. It's, it's better in some respects than Lovable, but it's a little more complicated to use. Yeah. Lovable's made the whole process far simpler for people who don't have any facility. So you'll be able to build and publish your thing using Lovable in a way that you couldn't if you were using Claude Code or Claude, the browser interface. It will write the code for you, but then you have to figure out a way to take that code and put it somewhere where it'll actually run. It'll run in the artifacts window in Claude, but that's not going to give it access. That the access is not provisioned to anybody else other than yourself.
Yeah. So Gwyn, there's a question in the chat. Gwyn, how long is this going on? Lovable will continue to be in existence, right? But this special week is through Sunday. And they have a Discord. They're saying, we're here to build with you. So ask questions on Discord or X or LinkedIn. There are probably hashtags and that kind of stuff. So productivity boost was Monday. Go bananas, do something with nano bananas. So creating something with image generation. Day 3 was lovable 4, fill in the blank. And this is interesting. Have you noticed it's easy to rebuild Lovable or ChatGPT with Cloud Plus AI? What's your spin? So that it sounds like they're kind of daring you to like, hey, build a copycat. Player 1 build was day 4, October 2nd, which was yesterday. Build a puzzle game or a mini arcade or some sort of game experience. And today is growth and progress, something that helps people self-improve, habit tracker, mindfulness tool, those sorts of things, a learning aid. And then this weekend is dream big final build, shoot for the moon.
Beth, is that on lovable.com? You go there?
That is Lovable is actually lovable.dev, but yes,
Okay.
this is their 7-day Lovable build challenge.
Because when I go to lovable.dev, then it logs me into my environment. I'm not sure how to get to that.
Lovable.dev/cloud gives you, but I'm on a page that says login. So so maybe if you log out, you'd see this. And this is just giving you the ideas of where you could go. There's also community events. And so there's a community event today. It's on Luma, and I expect that they're probably answering questions, and perhaps there are recordings of them. I have not gone further into it. I'm just seeing, like, when Nate Jones says, hey, everybody, do it now. I think that's important to pay attention, and I will amplify that message. And the other thing about this is, as Brian was talking about, and Andy, you too, being able to do these things, there's value in the doing of it before the result is successful, right? There's a lot of value of knowing what this is, how to interact with it, and then getting the results. But a bunch of what is distinguishing people who are AI first or AI native or AI familiar is the way you talk about something. And this informs how you're going to talk about it, less than your end result. So that sounds good to us. Monday, we will be back with a new show. We'll be back with new shows all week next week. And we hope you join us. Go ahead and engage in chat in our the Daily AI Show community.com community hub. Gareth has said something about his video about consent. So I don't know if that's something he's going to post somewhere, but that would be very cool to see Gareth's take and Brian's take come out on Saturday. And for everybody else, hope you have a good weekend. Build with AI and play if you have the time and the interest. And we'll be back on Monday. All right.
Aloha.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Take care.